Yo, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Shonee Jackson Show, episode 4. Today is the college day. We talked about the pros yesterday. That episode will be releasing today, Tuesday, July the 2nd. So if you're listening to this, it is Wednesday, July the 3rd, or beyond that. Obviously, 4th of July weekend this week. So definitely want to get some podcasts out before that, give you something to listen to over the long weekend. Hope everybody enjoys their 4th of July, obviously, and has great plans moving forward. But today is a loaded slate of topics to talk about on the college show. So I definitely need to keep a good, solid pace, but, don't want to go too fast, but need to keep a good, solid pace to try to keep this to a reasonable time on the podcast today. But this is the Shonee Jackson Show. We're going to do what we do, and we're going to go as long as we need to go. It's got a lot of shit to get off my chest, right? There's been a lot of news in the college sports world in the last week or since last time we spoke on college sports, especially involving my Longhorns, not just in football, not just in the inaugural move of the SEC, but first and foremost, obviously, the major news that shook the college sports world last week when the Texas Longhorns went and hired Jim Schlossnagle from their rival, in-state rival, Texas A&M Aggies baseball program the day after he coached the national championship game for Texas A&M, the very first national championship game that a men's sports team at Texas A&M has played for in my entire lifetime, or at least a men's sports of importance in the college sports world that is watched and paid attention to, right? And I don't think, quite frankly, obviously, if you're not a Longhorns fan, the national reaction to this is distasteful and angry, and people hate Jim Schlossnagle and can't believe what he did and how he did it. I had the clip pulled, but since it's been a week and everybody's seen it, everybody knows the deal. I don't need to play the press conference after the national championship game. Not that I'm scared to or care about it, because it doesn't bother me at all, quite frankly. And obviously, I'm a Texas fan, so that maybe doesn't surprise you. And yet, I don't think that there's really any other way to handle that. When he lost the national championship game, it's minutes after the fact, and reporter out of College Station asked him essentially, "Are you going to Texas?" Or the coaching rumors, alluding to the fact that there had already been heavy rumors that the Texas deal was already done and set in place. To sign him after that game was over. And so they asked him about it, asked him if he's coming over to Texas. And he put on a gaslighting 101 performance, period. He gaslit the entire situation. He blew up on the reporter, got mad about it, called it a selfish question, which, to be fair, nobody's bringing this point up. It was a selfish question. We talk about how angry we are because everybody knew he was going to Texas, and then the next day he goes to Texas after blowing up on the reporter for asking him if he's going to Texas. But are we going to act like the reporter was thinking about Jim Schlossnagle or the players that just lost the game when he asked that question? No. And you say, oh, well, the players, half the players, or more than half of them, are coming with him, or at least leaving A&M. But I bet you half of them, or more, the majority of them, come to Texas. And for every Aggie in the world that currently lives in Austin, Texas, which I think is about 95% of you, you should really understand this. Every single one of you graduates from A&M or leaves College Station and ends up in Austin, Texas. It's quite frankly just a better place to be. And it's very well documented and known that Jim Schlossnagle has been very fond of the Texas Longhorns coaching job since he was back at TCU and probably before that. The Texas Longhorns are arguably the premier baseball program in all of college baseball, only to be competed with against LSU, in my opinion. I think it's very fair to place LSU after winning that seventh national championship above Texas in college baseball, and especially with recent success and the way that program is dominant year in, year out. Texas has been off and on under the David Pierce era, and yet the Texas Longhorns, the brand, the uniforms, the pinstripes, everything about it, and the tradition and history of that baseball program, they're like the New York Yankees of college baseball, right? And there's never really been a bigger big brother moment amongst in-state rivalries in all of college sports, or just rivalries in all of college sports, than what I saw right here, right? Everybody always wants to talk about the entitlement of Texas Longhorns fans and former players or what have you, and how Texas just thinks their shit don't stink or they're entitled and they think that they deserve everything. Well, guess what? You would be fucking entitled to. This is why we're entitled. Because the Texas A&M Aggies, who hate us more than they even love themselves, and they hate the Texas Longhorns more than anything on the planet Earth. They constantly want to compete against the Longhorns and everything and act like they're on the same playing field as the Texas Longhorns as an athletic department, as a university. They got their money there, their oil and ag money. They throw it around. They can't stand the University of Texas, and they just had the greatest season in program history in baseball, or quite frankly, in any sport in A&M history, with the greatest coach, quite frankly, to ever coach A&M in anything, in Jim Schlossnagle. Let me read you something about Jim Schlossnagle. In his coaching career, he's 946 and 452. In his tournament career, he's 80 and 46. He won the SEC West with Texas A&M in 2022. Obviously, took him to the College World Series multiple times, taking them to the College World Series finals this year. He won the Big 12 at TCU in 2015, 2017, and 2021. He won the Big 12 tournaments in 2014, 2016, 2021. He won the Mountain West a bunch of times, Mountain West tournament a handful of times, won the Conference USA tournament twice. He's won a Super Regional in 2020, in 2010, 2014, 2015, 2016, 2017, 2022, and 2024, and won NCAA regionals in 2009, 2010, 2012, 2014, 2015, 2016, 2017, 2021, and 2024. His awards: he was Baseball American National Coach of the Year in 2016, NCBWA National Coach of the Year in 2010, Field Turf National Coach of the Year in 2010, Big 12 Coach of the Year in 2015, Mountain West Coach of the Year in 2003, 2006, 2007, 2008, 2009, 2010, 2011. Jim Schlossnagle is easily the most accomplished and most successful coach to ever put on a Texas A&M hat and coach that ball club or coach any sport at the University of Texas A&M. I don't care who y'all brought in to coach the program after they were long beyond washed and beyond their prime and on their years. You had an excellent coach in his prime, right? And then all you muck, disgusting, weirdo, doofus fucks in College Station doing what you guys do. The classic Texas A&M, let's try to all of a sudden pull the moral high ground in a situation here, right? Jim Schlossnagle, you're hearing a lot of people that, one, couldn't get Jim's cock out of their throat for the better part of the last 3 years, come on to say, you know what, he's a great baseball coach, I get leaving, I get money whipping, which has absolutely nothing to do with this. Get into that right after this. I get all that, but it's just who the guy is. Y'all are getting a shitty guy, and it's his morals and the way he handled it. Be a man. Do this. Do that. This is the same university and alumni base that worships the ground that Johnny Manziel walks on. The same people that are saying all the same things about Jim Schlossnagle being such a piece of shit, disposable human being are the same people saying, oh, look what happened with Chris Beard. Let's see how this one plays out. Are you fucking kidding me? Right? And I don't really care. This is the Shonee Jackson Show. I'm not here to take moral high grounds really fucking ever, and that's not what I'm doing here. I'm just more so exposing the fucking losers that represent the University of A&M, whether it's former alumni, former players, whether they work for TexAgs, whether they do anything, they create content, and they're well-known A&M graduates, alumni, and fans. That's who I'm addressing with this. Don't ever try to take the moral high ground when you represent the University of Texas A&M. You're a school that is known for money whipping. You just had a recruiting class in football a few years ago that you completely bought. Half the thing blew up and went away. The players either got kicked off the team or have transferred out. You're not a university that represents yourselves in the moral category better than most around the country, regardless of what you want to believe as A&M alumni. You're a fucking joke, okay? Nationally considered, look, this thing with Jim Schlossnagle and everybody hating him and hating the way this went down, this will last for a couple weeks, maybe in a couple months, maybe it even lasts for a season. But what's going to last for the rest of time, as long as I'm breathing, as long as you're breathing, as long as this world is spinning and the sun comes up, is that every single fan in the country that did not go get a degree from the University of Texas A&M, or their parents didn't get a degree from the University of Texas A&M, and they have no ties to that university, therefore there's absolutely no reason to ever like that university, thinks you are a bunch of fucking cultic, weirdo dorks. And that's what it is. And Jim Schlossnagle didn't leave because he got money whipped, didn't leave for any of the other reasons you want to create in your head to cope with the situation that your most hated rival just took the greatest coach in the history of your program's history. Go ahead, say whatever you got to do and cope with it. But at the end of the day, you're a bunch of dork losers. That's what Jim Schlossnagle thought about you, and the University of Texas is elite in everything that we do, and that's where entitlement comes from. He didn't come over here because of money. He stated in the SEC kickoff party that we had the other day. Let me see if I can find the clip. He talks about, here it is for you. He's talking about his relationship. Hold on, let me pause that real quick. He's talking about his relationship with Chris Del Conte, how he got hired at A&M under Ross Bjork. They bring in Trev Alberts. That relationship's not necessarily the same. You can take this clip for what you want, call it shade if you want, say whatever you want. But he clearly had a long-standing relationship going back to TCU with Chris Del Conte, who is the fucking man, by the way. Let me tell you something. Chris Del Conte's a bad motherfucker. He's a bad motherfucker. He gets what he wants. He takes what he wants. His major hires since being at the University of Texas, Steve Sarkisian. He hired Chris Beard. That ended the way it did. That's a travesty. Fuck Chris Beard is what it is. And now Jim Schlossnagle, right? Elite of the elite hires. All three guys. I understand we went after Urban Meyer. Blessing in disguise that he didn't take the job. He gets Steve Sarkisian, home run. Jim Schlossnagle's going to be another fucking home run. Let me play this clip for you of Jim explaining kind of part of the reason why he left A&M for Texas.
Tipping point reason, it was just I took a job under one pretense with an athletic director in Ross Bjork, and Trev I think is going to do great things at Texas A&M. There were some things that led me to it just became a different job, and there's a lot of uncertainty in college athletics, as we all know, and there's going to be uncertainty everywhere. But the one thing I know of that is relatively certain is my relationship with Chris, and that's not a negative on Texas A&M. They're going to think what they want to think, and that's okay. But it was just more of my relationship with Chris. I don't want to coach forever.
Yeah.
And so for the remainder of which I do want to coach, I wanted to have some certainty with the future. And again, I think A&M is going to do great things, but University of Texas was just too much to walk away from.
Right. Makes plenty sense to me. Makes plenty sense to me. If you're being logical about it, it makes all the sense in the world why it happened. Okay? And the reality to this situation is this was a reality check for Texas A&M, their fan base. At the end of the day, I think when Texas A&M, and I'm going to get into kind of how that movement happened when I get into an SEC conversation at Texas No U officially joining, but when that whole thing went down and the Pac-16 that was going to develop, I'll talk about that later, fell apart because the Texas Longhorns did the Longhorn Network, and then the entire plan blew up. A&M goes to the SEC. Some schools go to the Pac-12. Some schools go to the Big Ten. The Big 12, as we knew it from the late 90s up until that point, had completely blown up. A&M goes to the SEC, and they developed a false sense of reality that is not existent to what actually exists in the world, right? They developed a false sense of entitlement for a lot of people that want to talk about the entitlement of the Texas Longhorns. Right, and more importantly, they developed a false sense of importance that does not exist to anybody in the country outside of the realm of that College Station cult. Okay, they go to the SEC, and in year one, Johnny Manziel wins the Heisman, and they think that they are either on level footing with Texas or superior to them at that point. Texas goes through the worst 15-year stretch in men's program sports of my lifetime and really of all time in the history of the Texas Longhorns athletic department. A&M won that Heisman with Johnny Manziel, and they did absolutely nothing with that momentum. They only beat Alabama 2 times since they've been in the SEC. That is their greatest accomplishment since joining the SEC, outside of the Johnny Manziel Heisman, which he should really hand over to his offensive lineman and Mike Evans, to be quite frank with you. No shade to Johnny Manziel. I like Johnny Manziel as a guy. See him around Austin all the time, just walking about, hanging out with his girlfriend, doing whatever. Johnny Manziel's out and about with the folks. Just like every other one of you Aggies, just like Jim Schlossnagle, he lives here in Austin, Texas now, right? Not in College Station, because who the fuck would live there if they don't go to school in College Station? Right? So you guys developed a level of importance that has never existed to anybody outside of that cultic brain that you live in between your ears. And this right here, if it hadn't already happened when we moved over to the SEC and you threw a bitch fit and it made your athletic director take off and run, which led to this type of situation, oh man, complete meltdown where half of your fan base still to this day wants to go join the Big Ten now and run away from Texas once again. The reality check is more so than ever with Jim Schlossnagle taking this Texas Longhorns job. It answers the question of it being Texas 100 piles of dog shit and trash, and then A&M somewhere down there. And that's going to be the existence. It's been that way my whole life. It's been that way your whole life. It's going to be that way my entire kid's whole life if I ever have any. And until this world essentially ends, or college football as we know it ends, right? That's the way it was, that's the way it is, and that's the way it's going to be, especially now with the Texas Longhorns joining the SEC. And also, news flash, guys, the Dixie Chicken fucking sucks. Austin is a lot better. All that said, the good news about all this stuff, as college sports fan and especially college football fans, is this football game this year that's going to be played in College Station, Thanksgiving weekend, Saturday, not on Thanksgiving this year. I'm sure that'll change down the line. Thanksgiving's for the Dallas Cowboys, though. I'll always say that. It is going to be the most volatile and vitriol college football environment this season, and maybe that we've seen in a very, very, very long time. Now, will it be as vitriol, hateful, and like overall dangerous that Lubbock, Texas was when we returned with Chris Beard in basketball? I don't know. I don't think that those dorks in College Station are cut like the people up in the Panhandle are. Personally, I was born in Amarillo, Texas, raised in the Austin area. They're cut a little different, man. When you got one of the windiest areas in the entire country, if not the windiest area in the country, in the Panhandle of Texas, plus the fact that it absolutely just smells like shit and death, literally, I'm not kidding you. That's just a recipe for frustration and anger to begin with. Those people up there in the Panhandle live to die, right? So that level of hatred that we received when we went back with Chris Beard might not get completely matched, but the overall national attention on this game being at the end of the year, the fact of the matter is I think both teams are going to be playing for a lot. I've already predicted the Texas Longhorns are going to win the national championship with an undefeated season. So you know what I think they'll be playing for. They'll be playing for an SEC championship appearance, maybe the number one overall ranking in the country. Quinn Ewers likely playing for Heisman opportunities. But Texas A&M, they got a very favorable schedule. I'm going to pull it up real quick. They could absolutely be playing for a lot as well. And listen, as much as I like to bash you doofuses and losers there in College Station, I think you got a hell of a football roster still. I like Mike Elko, and I think Mike Elko is a great coach for A&M. He ain't going anywhere. You don't got to worry about anybody coming in and getting him. And what I mean by that is not that he's not a good enough coach to get a job elsewhere. He is. He did a magnificent job at Duke, which nobody does a good job at. But, I think he likes it at A&M, and nobody's going to outspend A&M, right? The Longhorns aren't going to come get Mike Elko. So you got a coach that could be in place for a very, very long time, that understands the culture. He's already built really good defenses there. He's always going to do that. And, I think you got a good roster. I think you got a good quarterback if you can keep him healthy. Just had a pretty solid performance at the Manning Passing Academy, which I'll get into later. But more importantly, like I said, they got a very favorable schedule this year, and I think that they should easily win 10 games. Let's look at it. They open up against Notre Dame, they're going to lose. I'm going to talk about them later, and look, they got to kick the ball off. They're going to play it. I'm not going to be like everybody else and act like what I say is law and it's going to happen, but I think they're going to lose this fucking game. I think that Riley Leonard, first year at Notre Dame, playing his old coach at Mike Elko, he's going to go into College Station, be a good environment. They'll be singing their dorky-ass songs and what have you, but I think Notre Dame's got a very good football team with a better quarterback and, at least as good of a head coach. And I think Notre Dame, haven't looked at their schedule, but I'm very high on the Golden Domes this year, especially with the addition of Riley Leonard. Sorry, let me take a sip. Especially with the addition of Riley Leonard. Need to pick up my pace here a little bit, but I think Notre Dame wins that game. They're going to beat McNeese. They're going to beat the shit out of Florida, or at least they should. They're going to beat Bowling Green. They play Arkansas on AT&T Stadium. Dead man walking as a coach in Arkansas and Sam Pittman. They should beat them. So at this point, I got them 1, 2, 3, 4-1. Missouri should be a tough game. Missouri's good. Drinkwitz has got it cooking there, so who knows? Let's just leave that up for debate because I got them losing at least 2, 3 games. Mississippi State, they should dog walk Mississippi State. LSU, I think A&M beats LSU this year. This is a game that they've been trying to manufacture into a rivalry that's never going to become a rivalry again. They leave, try to get away from Texas, try to create their own identity. How the fuck has that worked out? LSU does not care about A&M other than the fact that they think they're annoying like the rest of the country does. But this is at Kyle Field. I want to pick LSU in this game. I'm sure when the game actually comes around on October 26th, I will be picking LSU. I hope I will be. But I got way too many fucking concerns about the interior defensive line at LSU and the overall defense at LSU. They made a lot of good staff hires, but the players are not there yet. So I don't know. I think A&M has a better roster than LSU this year and beats them. South Carolina, they should beat them, and Shane Beamer should be on his way out this year. New Mexico State beat them. Auburn, better than Auburn, and then Texas. So I got them either at 10 wins, or if they do the A&M thing and fumble games and lose to other teams, they're at 9 or 8 wins. Still a solid season at this point and a solid team. And if Connor Weigman is healthy, like I said, this game and this atmosphere is going to be different than ever. This is the most important game in the history of Texas A&M football program, in the history of Texas A&M sports. This game right here is more important than that national championship baseball game was, all right? And we understand that. They understand that. Sark's been asked about it. Going back to last year was asked about this game. Okay, he says we'll be ready. I think we'll be ready. There's going to be a lot on the line, but whatever records can be broken as far as noise made in a stadium, decimal points reached, NFL or college, fuck it, soccer, European, whatever you want to bring in, I think A&M's going to push all of those records with just noise, sound in a stadium. They'll be singing their lame-ass songs, doing their sway, doing the whole thing until this thing either, gets out of hand or it's over, right? I think Texas wins the game. I think we do what we do, and we shatter the hearts of Aggies. But what an electric game it's going to be. Everybody in college football should be happy that this is back. And, in fact, I think if the A&M Aggies don't try to ducktail and run off to the Big Ten, or maybe the Big Ten never accepts that, they stay over here in the SEC, that this should honestly become the premier rivalry in college football. And by that, I've already kind of said that, Texas and Georgia. I don't mean like national championship contenders, but A&M is set to be better than they ever were in the Big 12, or that they ever were in the Southwest Conference outside of the decade and a half where they had of wins washed away from cheating and recruiting, right? But the reality is, in the modern era, with more attention to sports and social media and college football than there ever has been, and then they got the resources and NIL to compete with damn near anybody, they're going to be a lot better than they always were before, so the game should be more competitive. It means more now. Recruiting means more now. The fan base is like, the Longhorns have not been on top of the college football world in the social media era, right? Now they are, and now you're seeing the hate and the disdain and the overall fear that I think people have of the Texas Longhorns being on top, which is where you see the constant, poo-pooing, if you will, of, is Texas really back? Is Quinn Ewers really that good? Yada, yada, yada. You don't see that from odds makers that have no bias. You don't see that from the robot computers that make the decisions on who's going to be good and who's not, and who's going to win, and national title odds and this, that, and the other, right? It's only humans that don't want Texas to be on top of the college football world or just college sports in general. And it's very clear it's headed in that direction. So, excited about that. Let's get into just Texas Longhorns football in general. And just the news that Texas and OU are officially in the SEC, man. It's exciting. The day is finally here. I can't believe it's finally here. It felt too good to be true when it was announced, and now it is reality. We're a few months away from playing actual football games in the SEC, volleyball games in the SEC, and every other sport, of course. God, it's exciting. The Longhorns had a kickoff party the other day. I want to say Oklahoma's going to do the same thing. It was awesome. It was downtown and on campus around Bevo Boulevard and where they do all the tailgating stuff. They had Pitbull perform, had all the coaches. Obviously, I showed you the Jim Schlossnagle clip earlier. Had former players, current players, what have you, there to celebrate the inaugural entrance into the SEC. You had the SEC Network there, and Eraserhead fucking Paul Feinbaum was there making stupid-ass comments. And listen, Paul Feinbaum, he had a clip. I don't know if I even have it pulled, but they asked him about who would be starting at the University of Texas at the end of the season, and he said, no doubt, Arch Manning. Listen, from one pot stirrer to another, I will tip my cap to that Eraserhead fuck Paul Feinbaum, but Jesus Christ, give it a rest, Paul. Give it a damn rest. Arch Manning, I'm just as excited about as the next guy. I'm going to talk about Arch a little bit later, his comments at the Manning Passing Academy, obviously, and reports that he's shining in summer camp. But Quinn Ewers is the fucking man. Let's stop the bullshit, okay? I'll get back to the SEC stuff. Let me just quickly pull up Quinn Ewers' game log last year and just talk about his season. There is a massive disconnect with Quinn Ewers' season, like the reality of it and the way people talk about it. First and foremost, Quinn Ewers had a very good season. It's important to note that he missed like 2.5 games. That affects his stats, right? The other thing that's very important to note is that he played nothing but 3-3 flyover defenses that were terrified of getting lit up by our passing attack, and especially getting lit up deep over the top in the Big 12. Every single defense we played in the Big 12, we're in a variation of that bullshit, right? And he's not going to see it anymore. The game you need to be looking at for Quinn Ewers, or what you can expect of Quinn Ewers going into the SEC, is none other than that Alabama game. You're going to get a lot more man coverage in the SEC. You're going to get 2-man. You're going to get cover 2. You're going to get normal fronts, 4-3 fronts, 3-4 fronts that you're looking at throughout the conference, and teams that have the athletes to not be terrified of constantly getting beat over the top by Texas Longhorns electric receivers and an elite quarterback in Quinn Ewers. The question on Quinn Ewers being very good is not a question. He is very good, established, very good quarterback. The question is, will he become elite and the best quarterback in the country? That's the only thing we're waiting on. The only thing that could lead Quinn Ewers to losing his job this year is an injury. And knock on wood, that doesn't happen. I think he has one of the best, if not the best, offensive line in the country this year to go along with his running games and weapons. I think he's going to be just fine. But that Alabama game, he goes 24 for 38, 349 yards, 63% completion percentage, 3 touchdowns. It should have been 4. Xavier Worthy dropped one, hit him right in the hands early in the game. 50-yard long. He had 2 long touchdown throws, 166.4 rating, and his QBR was 90.8. That's what it's going to look like for Quinn Ewers, if not even better in the SEC, with the weapons he has and the line that he has. So cut the fucking bullshit. Quinn Ewers isn't losing his job. Paul Feinbaum's doing what Paul Feinbaum does. That's fine. I respect it. It's all good. All good. All's fair in love and war, but we're coming. He knows it. The rest of the world knows it. And to be fair, Paul Feinbaum also acknowledged that the Longhorns' addition to the SEC is the single greatest addition in the history of the conference. So Paul is conference and organization over self and team, and I'll give him that credit. It's SEC over his own family, over his mother, over his father, over his Tennessee Volunteers. Paul Feinbaum puts the SEC first, and he definitely understands the importance and the benefit that the Longhorns are bringing, right? But let's just talk about the excitement for both Texas and OU. You know what I mean? They had the kickoff party. The anticipation is through the fucking roof. I got the video clip pulled of the original and inaugural announcement of the first official SEC meetings between the Texas Longhorns and Oklahoma joining the conference. And here it is. I will play it for you.
There's a reason why Texas A&M left the Big 12, to be standalone, to have our own identity.
That's the greatest video ever made. That was made like in 2021 when the announcement was made, and Ross Bjork threw a fit about the Longhorns joining the program, joining the SEC, tried to stop it from happening, acted like he could potentially stop it from happening, which is cockamamie. And just what a fantastic fucking video that is. That's the greatest video I've ever seen in my life. And shout out Justin Tucker, of course. How can we forget? But obviously, that said, the bullseye is square on the Texas Longhorns and OU too. I'm not, like OU, blue blood program. As far as tradition is concerned, as much as I fucking despise that school, I despise that state, I despise every single idiot that roots for the school. I even gotten like a day-long Twitter fight with half of Norman yesterday. I triggered them before 10 a.m. And yet, blue blood program that adds a lot to the SEC, not just in football, but multiple other sports, and also very easy to dislike. So there's going to be a target on Oklahoma as well, but the bullseye is square on the Longhorns at the Manning Passing Academy, which I'll talk a little bit about after this. Quinn Ewers had some comments about we're everybody's biggest game. That went crazy, pissed off every fan base along the SEC. Again, the entitlement of the Longhorns, what we think of ourselves. Well, just look at the TV ratings when it's all said and done, all right? When your team plays Texas, look at the TV ratings versus when your team plays anybody else in the world. And tell me, even your biggest rivalry, whatever game is circled on your schedule every single year, check that one and then check the Texas one, and you'll see what Quinn Ewers is talking about. Let's see how your team travels when they come to Texas, how well everybody travels when they play in Austin, Texas. It seems like the entire university alumni bases come and at least stay in Austin during that week, whether they're going to the game or not. Texas is more important than everybody else. Cut the bullshit. Cut the bullshit. It's the richest athletic department in the country year in, year out. Every now and then, Ohio State and A&M compete for that, but Texas is always at the very top of it. We're always winning Directors' Cups. We're always talked about nationwide. Texas is Texas. The entitlement comes for a reason. If you were a Texas fan, if you went to Texas, if you were a part of this program, rooted for this program, you would have a sense of entitlement too. That's just the reality of it. That's going to piss a lot of people off. That is going to be triggering. Texas triggers people, and it's also just the fucking truth. If it wasn't the truth, it wouldn't bother you. If it wasn't the truth with the slightest comment by Quinn Ewers, he wasn't trying to create clickbait. I promise you that. But it's just the reality of what he's saying in that interview is our mindset is ready for the hate. That entire year, the last year in the Big 12, where remind you, I think we got 2 pass interference calls the entire year when we have the fastest player in the history of the NFL Combine, maybe the fastest player ever. Xavier Worthy got more separation more often than any player I've ever seen in college football get, ever. He got 5 yards plus of separation more than anybody. Therefore, that tells you he probably got held a lot. Probably got interfered with a lot. He absolutely did. They never got called. So we faced hate from the entire Big 12 all year last year when we were blamed more than Oklahoma or anybody else for leaving the conference. And dealt with all that last year. So Quinn Ewers is really telling you we're already embracing hate. We know everybody hates us. We know what everybody thinks about us coming over, how we're entitled, how we think we're so good, how we think we're going to do this and that, but haven't won a championship since 05 or whatever. Only 2 conference championships in the Big 12 since the first one. Whatever you want to say. That's what he's saying, is we're aware and we're ready and we attack that shit. He wasn't trying to make clickbait, but no matter what we do. If Arch Manning loses his ID, it's clickbait. If Arch Manning decides not to be in a video game, it goes nationwide for a fucking week. The University of Texas is everybody's important game, and it is the topic of college sports around the country more often than not. That's just the reality to it. And also, last thing I want to say on this SEC thing, Oklahoma, Texas A&M, and everybody involved in this, man, the conference realignment is badass. At this point, if you still don't think that, then you just shouldn't watch college sports. Later on, I'm going to talk about the October 12th slate that is set for college football that kind of defies just how amazing this conference realignment is and what it creates for college football and the excitement, potential matchups of it. The conference realignment is badass. But you can thank the Texas Longhorns Network for forming and coming together and saving what was originally going to be the Pac-16. When that all went down, the Texas Longhorns, the Aggies, Texas Tech, Oklahoma State, Oklahoma, Colorado, I want to say that's it. Maybe there were others. Nebraska was always going to the Big Ten. We were all set to go to the Pac-10, Pac-12 at that time and make it the Pac-16, which would have been the original super conference. And now, in hindsight, it's the greatest thing that never happened for every program involved. The Pac-12 is dead behind the times. It was never committed to sports the way the SEC was. And then, obviously, geographically, Texas and Oklahoma and even A&M, if they'll get off of their sissy fit, belong in the SEC. All the matchups make sense. They make sense geographically. They make sense with the fan bases, with the coaching staffs, recruiting wise. It all comes together more so than any other conference comes together. It comes together way more than the Big Ten Super Conference comes together, the next closest competitor, and we're away from the Big 12. We're not the Pac-12 or the ACC. Pac-12 is dead. The ACC could die if they don't figure it out post losing Florida State. And so if it wasn't for the Longhorns Network, ironically, this would have never happened. And college football would just look entirely different. So again, if you don't think that Texas is entitled for a fucking reason or feels a reason to think that we're as powerful as we are, look no further than the way that Longhorn Network situation happened. And the fact of the matter, we said, you know what? We don't want to go over there. Instead, we want our own network, so we're going to stay here. And then Oklahoma's dreams to go into the Pac-12 just immediately died because they're attached to us, whether they want to admit it or not. And then now we're here where we are in 2024 with the conference realignment, us set to go to the SEC as the biggest brand in the land and the biggest conference in the land. And it's fucking fantastic. So thank the Longhorn Network for that. Is there anything else I want to say? And as far as the SEC is concerned, I do want to say I currently believe that Texas and Georgia are in a class of their own. Okay? And that's not a shot at everybody. It's the best conference in the country, and there's multiple teams competing for it and or believe they're competing for the national championship. But I'm a believer that there's 4 teams really year in, year out that really have a realistic chance of winning a national championship. I believe in the 5-star plus and or super blue chip ratio players of whoever leads the country, the top 4 teams usually year in, year out that have not only the most blue chips, there's the blue chip ratio that we all know about, but the most super blue chips. That's top 50 players in America essentially win the national championship. So I think that Georgia, Ohio State, Texas, and Oregon are in a tier of their own. And when all the rankings come out, you're going to have Georgia and Ohio State at 1 and 2. Ohio State, I talked about them on the last show. I'll say a little bit again. I also have a belief in my mind that you could be in that category, but what could eliminate you is there's some key components to an organization that you also need to have to win championships in football. And 2 of those things exist at the quarterback position and along the offensive line. And at Ohio State, I got questions with both of those things. Okay, you're not winning a national championship with Will Howard. Hate to break that to you. And you're not winning a national championship if your offensive line isn't good enough. So if you don't figure those 2 things out, you're eliminated from it. But Ohio State, Georgia, Oregon, and Texas are separate from, I think, the rest of the country going into this season. And I think you'll see that in the preseason rankings, the preseason odds, the preseason Heisman odds, anything that you see. And then you're going to see it on the field, in my belief. That said, I think Texas and Georgia are separate from everybody in the SEC right now, roster-wise, and with just having those elite 5-star top 50 players in the country, the type of guys that have like a 50% chance to get drafted in the NFL. That's what wins championships. Having more NFL players on your roster than anybody else. And I think Texas and Georgia currently separate themselves in this conference. And that's why I think that that's potentially going to be a premier matchup in the SEC and really just in the country in itself. But let's talk about, before I move on, just some key matchups for both Texas and Oklahoma. Let me pull it up on the screen. Obviously, the non-conference Michigan matchup, which kind of just alludes to, the modern era of college football, not being scared to play big matchups because there's a 12-team playoff. That's another great thing. We open up our first SEC conference game is against Mississippi State in Austin, Texas. We should slap them the fuck around. Obviously, the OU game, the premier game in college football this year, arguably. Georgia and Texas. This could be number 1 versus number 2. This could be the battle for number 1. This could be a national championship preview. I mean, I don't know how the rankings are going to play out and seeding's going to play out. It could be an SEC championship preview, obviously. Number 1 and number 2 are just going to play each other this year. It's not split by East and West. That's on October 19th. What a fucking awesome game that's going to be. Either at 2:30 or 7 p.m. Central Time. You'll have Kirby and you'll have Herb Street on the call there, the ABC crew. The rekindling of the rivalry with Arkansas. You got Florida coming to Austin. I don't know how good Florida's going to be, but that's badass. Like, just these matchups that have never happened before, and the chance that we're going to have to go to places eventually like Georgia and Florida, or to go to Death Valley, or to go to these premier places in the SEC that Texas has never been to, although we've been so close in proximity. Like I said, the rekindling of the rivalry with Arkansas. We get to play Kentucky, and then again, of course, that massive, massive matchup at the end of the year with Texas A&M. Let's look at Oklahoma's schedule. They open up conference play with a matchup. This is one of my favorite matchups this year. Tennessee and Oklahoma. Josh Heupel, the last quarterback to win a national championship for Oklahoma in that 2000 season, predating 9/11. Josh Heupel returns home. See, I thought Josh Heupel before this extension, and I know Oklahoma fans, they think it's the greatest, smartest contract extension of all time. Oklahoma, their organization, athletic department, must be smarter than every other athletic department in the country because that's why they extended Brent Venables and nobody else does that, right? You know, he hasn't done anything to prove he deserves an extension. I get it, he won 10 games with a weak-ass schedule last year, mind you. But there is a strong chance that Brent Venables' greatest win in the history of his coaching career as a head coach at Oklahoma was that game in the Cotton Bowl last year against Texas. In fact, I'm going to go on record right now and say that will be the greatest win in the history of Brent Venables' head coaching career at the University of Oklahoma was that win against Texas last year, and it's never going to get better. And I have a feeling that humble pie will be served on September 21st when Tennessee rolls in with Josh Heupel and their young star quarterback, Nico Imamala, and they go in there, and I think they whoop Oklahoma's ass in Norman because I think Josh Heupel is the coach that you guys should have targeted if and when this Brent Venables thing doesn't work out. But I digress. And then they play Auburn at Auburn. That's badass. They get to go there. Obviously, Texas, South Carolina, and Norman. They go to Oxford, Mississippi to play a very, very talented and competitive Ole Miss team that in their own right is competing for a playoff spot, competing for the SEC, and hopefully a national title. Jackson Dart in year 3 should have an explosive year. They've built a little rivalry with Missouri. They've had some recruiting battles over the last few years that have gotten a little testy. Close in proximities, kind of the same type of people. Missouri, Norman, Oklahoma, Columbia, Missouri. They got that game in Columbia, Missouri. And then Alabama coming to Norman at the end of the year. These last 2 games, man, that's electrifying. Oklahoma playing Alabama in Norman on November 23rd, Thanksgiving week, and then going to LSU the week after that in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Man, that's electrifying. And I, so far, as of right now, actually got Oklahoma beating LSU. Got a lot of questions about LSU, dude. A lot of questions. They got like the 7th best title odds. They still get the credit that they get. It's a program that I rank as high as really any program in the country. You know, they might not have the money that like Texas and Ohio State have, but they got enough resources elsewhere and just a commitment in that state to the program that covers up for whatever they don't have. I mean, it's damn near impossible to lose at LSU. So Brian Kelly needs to get it in gear as far as competing for national championships as quick as possible because somebody else can, like Lane Kiffin. But anyhow, those are some exciting games. If you're not excited for conference realignment, if you're a Longhorns or Oklahoma fan that's not excited about going to the SEC, man, maybe just watch different sports or don't be involved in college sports, right? But that's the conversation about Texas and OU going to the SEC. Very, very, very exciting. There was also the Manning Passing Academy. I mentioned Quinn Ewers' comments. Arch Manning had some comments too. It's just how happy he was in the Longhorns program with his development so far, the way that that's gone, and how much he loves Coach Sarkisian, the reason he committed to Texas, this, that, and the other. He's succeeding a lot. Earlier I had mentioned that there are reports about Arch Manning just thriving in summer camp. We all watched his electric spring game performance, right? You know, so the hype train is through the roof. And if you were any person that was just a complete bozo and thought Arch Manning wasn't going to be good, or in fact went on record multiple times saying that he was going to be bad and would be a 3-star if his last name wasn't Manning, retire. Take 2 weeks off, then quit. To take the quote from that piece of shit Brett Favre, take 2 weeks off, then quit. You are an absolute joke, dude. You are a pigeon. If you thought a Manning, the quarterback family of all quarterback families, the first quarterback family, if you will, of all of football, right? Had this kid in Arch that came from the most athletic Manning of all the Mannings so far in Cooper. And he was bigger, stronger, and faster than the rest of the Mannings with the same development, coaching, growing up that all of those guys had in a modern era where the quarterback position is getting easier to play. Wasn't going to be good going to play for a coach that's the best, not second to anybody in the world in developing quarterbacks off the top of my head. Steve Sarkisian has had Carson Palmer, Matt Leinart, Matt Castle, who got drafted in the NFL without even starting a game. That's how much people respect the development of quarterbacks by Steve Sarkisian. He had Mark Sanchez, John David Booty. I'm not sure if he had Barkley or not, but that was around that time. Goes on to coach Washington, Jake Locker, comes back to USC, recruits elite quarterbacks to the position. His USC thing went the way it went. He goes on, he coaches Matt Ryan in the NFL, coaches Bryce Young, Mac Jones. I mean, the guy does not miss at the quarterback position. Everybody he coaches goes on to the NFL. He made Jake Locker a top 10 pick, and you guys think that Quinn Ewers could potentially get benched and Arch Manning isn't going to be good? Get the fuck out of here, dude. You're a bozo, you're a pigeon, and you don't deserve to talk about college athletes or high school athletes going into playing college football. You got a different agenda. You hate Texas. You should just admit that, because that would be a lot better. Like me saying LeBron James is 1-9 in NBA Finals, which he is. That's a conversation for a different day. At least I acknowledge I'm a LeBron James hater, right? That's well known. If you know me, you know I'm going to not glorify anything that he does great, and everything that he does bad, I'm going to, talk about even more. That's what you do, and that's part of sports. Hating is part of sports. But if you actually went on record saying that Arch Manning was bad and only good because of his name, you're a fucking joke. And it's the same type of people that said that about Arch Manning that think that the LeBron James, Bronny James Jr. thing is so fucking cool. Pick your poison, right? You just hate Texas, and that's what that's about. Back to the Manning Passing Academy. Let's talk about some standouts. Basically, the list of standouts that I saw here, let me just pull it up on the screen. I'm on 3 right now. So this is the report of On 3 standouts. They do just great coverage at On 3. They covered the Manning Passing Academy. It's pretty much every quarterback that was there, essentially. But what they had to say about a few of them: Quinn Ewers, for the second year in a row, Ewers was one of the best quarterbacks at the Manning Passing Academy. While Arch Manning did not throw at Friday Night Lights, Ewers did, and he turned in a very strong showing across the entirety of the competition. When it came to accuracy, Ewers was among the best by routinely hitting on timing throws, which is what he's best at. With the Longhorns headed to the SEC, the former 5-star will be one of the conference's top quarterbacks. He's going to be the conference's top quarterback. Mind you, the other conference top quarterback, Carson Beck, had a very good showing. Strong arm, accurate guy. Carson Beck's going to play quarterback for a long time. Going to play in the NFL. Going to have an excellent year at Georgia. Jackson Arnold, Jackson Dart. They said that what's the A&M guy? Connor Weigman. He made the finals in the Friday Night Light show with the winner, Riley Leonard, who I'm going to get into right now. What it says here on 3 about Riley Leonard. Riley Leonard transferring to Notre Dame from Duke. I was very high on him from Duke, even higher on what he's going to do at Notre Dame this year. It says Leonard was one of the most impressive quarterbacks at Friday Night Lights a year ago when he was entering the 2023 season as a Duke starting quarterback. Now, he's taking over his QB1 duties in South Bend, and the Irish are getting a quarterback with plenty of upside. Leonard has proven he can run the ball with an imposing 6'4", 215-plus pound frame, and after recovering from a pair of offseason surgeries, Leonard flashed a big arm on Friday night, and he won the event after forcing a 3-man overtime that resulted in only Leonard hitting the downfield moving target with former LSU offensive coordinator Mike Denbrock, now at Notre Dame. Very excited about that. Leonard has a chance to be one of the country's most talked about quarterbacks this fall. Absolutely, dude. Absolutely. One, he's at Notre Dame, one of the most prestigious universities in America, if not the most prestigious football university, just tradition-wise. I know a lot of people hate to hear that, but just tradition-wise, they're in a league of their own. They're an independent. They had that 100-year NBC deal or whatever it was. It's Notre Dame, right? And respect to Notre Dame. I like Notre Dame. I'm not a Notre Dame hater. But let's talk to he goes for, where am I at? 49 minutes? Exactly. All right, he goes for 250 completions on 391 attempts, 63.9 completion percentage, 2,900 yards passing, damn near 3,000 yards passing, 20 touchdowns to 6 interceptions with 141.5 average rating, right? 2023 season's disappointing due to injuries and other things, but, just didn't have the same type of year. 1,100 yards, only 3 touchdowns to 3 interceptions. Obviously, he got injured there. Obviously, it didn't hurt his standing around the nation and where people think of him. He is from Fairhope, Alabama. He's able to transfer from Duke to Notre Dame, and I anticipate that Notre Dame has a very, very good season this year. Let's pull up their schedule. They open up the season with an exciting game in College Station. I brought it up earlier, August 31st. I think they win that game. Then they got Northern Illinois, Purdue, Miami, Louisville, Stanford, Georgia Tech, Navy. I think they should win all of these games leading up to that Florida State game. So they should be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 0 going into Florida State. Florida State game, I'm excited to see what Florida State is. They got the transfer. The kid played for Clemson and Oregon State. The Samoan dude, the hell is his name? Drawing a blank, but they got the transfer from Oregon State, the quarterback. Let me see. I gotta look it up real quick. Getting a little scatterbrain at the end of this. DJ Uyunglele. He was at Clemson, then Oregon State. He's transferring into Florida State this year. That should be an exciting game and really a game that dictates a lot for Florida State's season and conference and beyond that. And then Virginia, Army, and USC. So they really Georgia Tech could be very good this year. I don't know how very good's a stretch, but they could be good this year. But to be honest, roster-wise, I mean, they could win every game on this schedule, arguably. Easily. They could go undefeated. They could lose one game. I think Notre Dame would be very disappointing with Riley Leonard this year if they don't make the playoffs. He was the standout at the Manning Passing Academy. Got tons of praise. So Notre Dame, Riley Leonard, the Manning Passing Academy. Let's move on from that. And let's talk about he has only played 3 years of organized sports, okay? He comes from a family that is all about education. Right, let me pull up his B-roll here while I'm talking. He's all about education in his family, okay? But he has natural and elite traits with natural elite measurables and athleticism, right? So, he, as you can see here, he's able to extend his hands, throw people around, ragdoll them. He has strength, athleticism, and a natural ability to just be nasty off the edge as he plays in high school, and he's only been playing for a little bit. So, there's things that you can't teach, like the natural instincts to be nasty as a football player that he already has. And then, what I really love about the kid is his eyes are always up. Okay, that's something that you usually have to teach kids coming out of high school into college. Keep your eyes up while you're pass rushing so you can see the play develop. You can see whether it's run, pass, or whatnot, and you can see, what you need to do, how you need to rush the passer. He keeps his eyes up, so he's already able to do that. He has natural skills and instincts that need to be there. Okay, he has a knack for the football as he forces a fumble right here. Let me see. Says he forces a fumble. Yeah, he has a knack for the football. He forces a fumble. And then on top of that, he's paired with elite other edge guys from the last two classes that Texas Longhorns have been recruiting. So the last 2 years, the Texas Longhorns edge recruiting guys, they obviously got Colin Simmons and Zena Umazulu. And then this year, they have a commitment from high 4-star, potential 5-star in Lance Jackson. And then now Smith Arogbo. This was a massive, massive commitment, right? I mean, when Steve Sarkisian took over the Texas Longhorns job, one of the first things that he and Kyle Flood began to say, the offensive line coach, was, we need bigger humans, right? Before we ever coached a game, it was announced that we were going over to the SEC. So we did not have a roster that was built for the SEC. We barely had a roster that was built to win in the Big 12. It was a point of emphasis to recruit big guys along both sides of the line of scrimmage. I've mentioned earlier in the podcast, we arguably have the best offensive line in college football. I'll probably mention that on every single podcast throughout the year. We are starting to establish one of the best pass rushes and defensive lines in college football. Let's not forget to mention the transfers that came into Texas this year, like Trey Moore from UTSA. That's a guy with 30-plus career sacks. That's a guy that's come to Texas to potentially be a first-round draft pick or second-round draft pick in the NFL as an edge rusher, to add with all-world Colin Simmons, another high 4-star in Zena Umazulu, and the guys that we've already been developing on campus, the Westlake boys and others, right? Guys that even started last year coming back for a second, third year in the rotation, maybe even starting. So the Texas Longhorns are establishing a very, very elite team along both sides of the line of scrimmage with very big, physical, stud athletes, and they got a taste. Like Smith Arogbo and Lance Jackson are both elite athletes, man. Lance Jackson is going to look like Julius fucking Peppers when he leaves the University of Texas. This is a guy that could potentially be a top 15, top 10 pick with the type of measurables that he has as an athlete. Super excited about him, if not like one of the most excited prospects in this class, with potentially a ton of exciting prospects. On the last episode, I mentioned the 5-star receivers that could potentially come in. So I love what Texas is building along the edge. I'm super excited about the Smith Arogbo commitment and that kid and his potential, man. Like, he hasn't even scratched the surface. I think that if there's anything to point at and nitpick about his game out of high school, it's his pad level. But if there's anything to nitpick and point out of anybody coming out of high school rushing the passer or even on the offensive line, it's usually their pad level. That's something that's absolutely going to be developed and coached at in college, and I don't have any concerns about that. I mean, that's just something that you can develop. It's not like instincts that you can't develop. You can't develop nastiness, a knack for the football. You can't develop his ability to manhandle offensive linemen 3 years into playing the game, right? That's not going to be developed. What will be developed is his pad level and things like that. So what I love about the kid's film, pull it back up just for a second longer. What I really, really love about the kid's film is everything that you see that can't be developed, that's already there, and then everything that you see that you would be concerned about is something that you have all the confidence in the world that we will be able to develop here at the University of Texas. So very, very happy about the Smith-Rogbo commitment. In other news, we did lose a battle of Dorian Brew to Oregon, and in general, just want to touch quickly and briefly. I don't have enough time to really dive into Oregon, maybe next episode, but Dan Lanning and what he is doing at Oregon is very fantastic, and I've acknowledged that. Now, I will say I think if Texas goes on to win the SEC or national championship, we're not going to have to worry about losing kids to Eugene, Oregon. No shot at Eugene, Oregon. Heard great things about it. I understand all the resources you got out there, but it's far away from the state of Texas, man, and I don't think kids are going to leave to play for Oregon as opposed to Texas. If they do, it'll be very few and far between. But we lost Dorian Brew, and I think we've lost a few others to Oregon. Like I mentioned earlier, it's Ohio State, Georgia, Texas, and Oregon, and in whatever order you want to put that in right now, those are the top premier schools in the country in college football, in my opinion, and it shows in recruiting and other areas. So, but other than that, Texas recruiting is in a very, very good place, especially along the line of scrimmage. Let's see what else I want to talk about before I wrap this puppy up. And the Texas defense in general. I know that there's a lot of questions. I just want to make a quick point. There's a lot of questions about the interior defensive line. We lost two of the best, if not the two best interior defensive linemen in the country to the draft. So obviously you expect to take a step back. I do want to make one point. Byron Murphy and Devondre Sweats, who I'm talking about, neither one of those guys had ever started a game at Texas before last year. Okay? And that's not to say that Alfred Collins and Vernon Broughton or whoever else fills in there is just going to immediately produce at the level that they produced at, but they might. Both of those guys were higher rated recruits than Devondre Sweat and Byron Murphy were. Both of them were also developed by Bo Davis up until this point, and both of them have a ton of upside, NFL upside. So that's just something to, store away in the brain and remember that's a grown man position. Oftentimes you don't shine in the interior defensive line until your junior, senior year, or even redshirt senior year in the case of these two players, because it's just a grown man, strong man position that takes years of development in those areas before you can get good enough, and just the ability to move in that body frame, right? But, I wouldn't be too down on that. I think people are talking like we're going to struggle on the interior defensive line. We're not. We're going to be just fine. Let's move on from Texas really quickly. Let's talk briefly about the college football 25 power rankings, offensive and defensive rankings that have come out, what I think about them, that's made a lot of news and noise. I am going to stream this game, man. I think that I was truly, it's a cool thing to talk about, which is why I haven't talked about it as much on the first few episodes. I think I'm truly in the 1% of human beings of hours played on NCAA football. I still play the jailbroken version to this day of NCAA 14, but dating back to 2002 with fucking Chris Winkie on the cover, it's been my number one game in my video game rotation. Love the game and can't wait to do a deep dive on the Dynasty that I think releases today. So next episode I'll talk about that. That's what I'm most excited about. And any true NCAA player, you hear all this Road to Glory shit and all that. I like every mode on the game. Any true NCAA video game player or now college football video game player, the bread and butter is the Dynasty. Let's cut the bullshit. It's not Road to Glory. It's not the atmosphere. It's nothing like that. It's building a dominant dynasty and a recruiting powerhouse, and that's what I'm looking forward to seeing. But let's pull up their offensive and defensive rankings real quick because this is some cockamamie shit. And I think that they said that they got everything from PFF, which, I'm very vocal of what I think about PFF's rankings list. I like their stats, and that's what stops that. Their list can kiss my ass. But let's pull it up. I got it right here. Georgia at the top, Ohio State, Oregon, Alabama, and Texas. Don't think I don't notice you guys consistently putting Alabama in every PFF list that I see above Texas, as if we didn't go and slap their ass around in T-Town last year, and as if our roster's not better than theirs is this year. Look, Alabama's still got questions. I talked highly on Alabama in the first episode. I think they're going to do very good under Kalen DeBoer, but nobody is sure of Jalen Milroe yet, including myself, all right? And there's other things. You didn't get better last year. You're still very, very good, but Alabama did not get better from last year to this year. Texas did. Cut this bullshit. Don't think I don't notice. You think you're going to get away because Texas is in the top 5 of everything, of me not noticing still the small little slights, like putting Quinn Ewers behind all the other top guys, putting Texas behind all the other top guys. It's just fucking fuel for us. I don't mind. But let's go to the bottom of the list and start talking about what's really fucking insane here. Let's start off with Colorado, the most popular one at 87 overall. Colorado has like a 4.5 or 5.5 over-under win total this year. I get it, the Shedeur Sanders hype. I like Shedeur Sanders. I don't root against Colorado. I have a lot of questions. My questions exist in the fact that, like, Deion Sanders is constantly doing book tours. Shedeur Sanders is doing concerts and creating music. Shiloh's fucking Shiloh doing whatever he does. They're, everywhere you look, Deion Sanders is speaking somewhere else, signing books here and there. Dan Lanning ain't doing that shit. Steve Sarkisian ain't doing that. Kirby Smart ain't doing that. Nick Saban wasn't doing that until towards the end, and even when he did do that, had the greatest staff in America and unit and force at Alabama that everybody literally copies now to this day and tries to replicate. So don't give me that bullshit about what Saban did so Deion Sanders can do it. You guys were putrid last year. If you're putrid again, this whole thing is over. But that's ridiculous. That's just hype bullshit. PFF overhyping Colorado and everything that they do. Oklahoma, we'll fucking see. I've been seeing Oklahoma's receiving core get a lot of hype. We'll see. Some of these are just very, very questionable on the offensive side. Let's pull on the defensive side. And then they also did like a overall, oh, here it is right here. I already had it pulled up. Overall power ranking. Let's see if that's on there. Whatever. Let's just go through this whole thing. It's the offensive team rankings, as I mentioned. Oh, no. I was on the defensive rankings. So that was the team rankings. I was on the team rankings. It's got Colorado. Erase everything I just said. It's got Colorado at 87 overall, number 16 in the country. They are projected to be the second worst team, I think, in the Big 12, odds-wise. Okay? That's just stupid as shit. Don't do some shit like that. That's stupid as shit. You deserve to be made fun of for that. I don't know if it's concerning because I imagine these will get, updated throughout the year, but that's ridiculous. LSU at number 8 is kind of crazy to me, but whatever. Colorado at number 16 is ridiculous, man. Ridiculous. Oklahoma has a 7.5 over-under win total. They're at 17. USC's at 19. We don't know if USC is going to be able to tackle yet. Iowa at 25. I don't know. Clemson at 6 is crazy to me. Dabo Swinney and Clemson is one of 4 or 5 programs that didn't take a transfer this year. The other programs are the military academies. The offensive team rankings. Georgia, Oregon, Alabama, and Texas are the top 4. I don't know why Alabama's number 3. I don't understand why Alabama's rated so high on these things. See if they got Colorado. They got Colorado at 8 on offensive rankings. Name the Colorado weapons in the comments if you want. Name them. Who fucking plays receiver not named Travis Hunter at Colorado? Who's going to run the ball for Colorado this year? Name 3 offensive linemen at Colorado. How the fuck is Colorado the 8th best offense in America? Defensive team rankings. Colorado at 20. LSU at 18. LSU, we don't know if they're going to be able to tackle or stop the run. Texas at 8. Clemson at 5, Notre Dame at 6. I think Notre Dame's going to have a very good defense. Oregon's going to have an elite defense. Georgia's going to have an elite defense. Ohio State's going to have an elite defense. I'm fine with that. Alabama should have a very good defense. USC at number 16, go fuck yourself with that. USC at number 16, USC should not be on the top 50 list until a Lincoln Riley coached team shows that they can tackle somebody. All right? That's just crazy to me. Crazy. Fix these rankings. Stop using PFF, okay? Let's stop putting a PFF rankings list with a cute little graphic that was well done and think that it's law and it means something. It's not. These guys are guys that are in their dorm rooms or came out of a dorm room in an internship making these lists. Doesn't mean that they're stupid. Doesn't mean that they shouldn't be respected at all. But there's a lot of bias that comes in with these lists. There's a lot of... They're not watching every team in the country the way I think that they are. I think it's... Some of it's stat-based. Some of it doesn't have context to it. You're looking at stats and you just throw a ranking on somebody. But the Colorado is all unwarranted hype. That's ridiculous. They've lost some of their best players on their football team. They haven't replaced it with good enough production, quite frankly, and we don't know anything about them. They fired a bunch of coaches, replaced a bunch. There's nothing but drama there. I don't even know if anybody likes the quarterback on the team. We'll see. And then they rated the toughest places to play. A&M at Kyle Field, number 1, is ridiculous. That is the most overrated place to play in America. And I know I said at the beginning of the show that game against Texas will be the most vitriol, volatile atmosphere in America. That has so much context to be explained, and I did explain it of why that's the case. They don't win enough games at home to be considered number 1 ever. Just because it is loud doesn't mean it is a tough environment to play in. They sing a lot of songs in unison, so it gets really, really loud. It's not scary to play there. Appalachian State just went there and beat their ass, all right? They lose most of their home games to their rivals against Texas. They lose most of the time at home against LSU. They lose most of the time at home against Alabama. When they play better teams at home, they lose. When they play teams on the same level as them at home, they sometimes lose. When they play teams that are supposed to be worse than them at home, they sometimes lose. Stop overhyping the atmosphere in College Station. It's weird. It's cultic. It's just loud. Nothing else about the tailgating, about the nightlife, about anything matches anything else about the other atmospheres. LSU should clear-cut be number 1. Alabama, Bryant-Denny Stadium is not a tough atmosphere. Shouldn't even be in the top 10. Shouldn't be in the top 10. They won a lot of games because they had the greatest coach of all time. It's not because of their fucking atmosphere and the 100,000 bowl cuts that they got in the stadium waving pom-poms. Okay? It's because they had a great coach. Ohio State, good atmosphere. Overrated, though. Not top 4. One of the most resourceful programs in America forever. That's why they're good. Georgia, I don't know. Guess it's pretty good. Penn State, elite atmosphere. Should be up there with LSU. The whiteout, they win games because of that shit. Wisconsin, Camp Randall, great atmosphere. They win games in that cold-ass atmosphere because of the atmosphere. Oklahoma, I mean, it should be higher than some of these schools. It should be higher than A&M. I mean, they've had much longer home winning streaks, so it's got to be a tougher place to play. Florida State, Doak Campbell, love it. Great atmosphere. Should be above Alabama. Should be above A&M. Should be above Ohio State. Great atmosphere. Right? And then the rest of the list goes on. You should be able to see it or just look it up. But want to talk about that. This is going to be a wrap, the end of the college football show, man. I had a lot to say, a lot to get off my chest. I'll cut some of this out to shorten it up. There was some points. You could hear dogs barking in the background, so it's time to cut this shit off. Just know I love y'all more than you know, not as much as you think. Have a great 4th of July week, and God bless.